When World War II ended, the jet age came rushing in, but not before a few last propeller-driven fighters reached their absolute peak. Aviation historians often call them superprops, machines built with the best piston engine technology the world would ever see. They were fast, sleek, and brutally powerful, yet born too late to fight in the war that created them. Among them stood the P-51H Mustang, a lighter, faster cousin of the famous P-51D, and the Republic XP-72, a thunderous powerhouse canceled when the jets took center stage. But one of these super props would find a real home, not on land, but at sea. The Hawker Sea Fury became the Royal Navy's ultimate piston fighter, the last of its kind to serve in combat. It bridged two eras, the thunder of pistons and the dawn of the jet. That bridge between two worlds was built by a company with deep roots in aviation history. Long before the Sea Fury roared to life, its makers had been shaping the very idea of the British fighter. The story began with Sopwith Aviation, whose Camel, Pup, and Snipe ruled the skies of World War I. When peace returned, so did heavy taxes, Britain's so-called excess profit levy, and Sopwith went under. Refusing to fade away, test pilot Harry Hawker joined Thomas Sopwith to buy back the assets, founding Hawker Engineering, later known simply as Hawker Aircraft Limited. Through the 1930s and into the war years, Hawker's lineage defined British air combat. The Hurricane carried the weight of the Battle of Britain. The Typhoon followed, fast, rugged, and terrifying at low altitude. Then came the Tempest, pushing the limits of piston performance with the Napier Sabre, and later the Bristol Centaurus Radial. Out of that evolution emerged a new prototype, the Hawker Fury, a sleeker, lighter Tempest built for ultimate speed. But with the Royal Air Force chasing the jet dream, the Fury was left without a future. One branch of Britain's air arm still relied on propellers, the Royal Navy. It adopted and transformed the Fury into a carrier fighter able to tackle both the sea and the new age of flight. The result was the Hawker Sea Fury, the last great piston engine warrior to wear Royal Navy wings. From that lineage came a fighter built not just for power, but for refinement. The Sea Fury carried Hawker's signature look, the muscular lines of the Tempest, but underneath the skin, it was a completely different animal. Where the Tempest relied on an internal framework of ribs and spars, the Sea Fury used a monocoque fuselage, its strength drawn from the skin itself. The result was lighter, stiffer, and more streamlined, a true step toward the design philosophy of the jet age. Inside, the cockpit was another leap forward. Gone was the old wrist-action control stick used in Spitfires and early Hawkers. In its place sat a conventional center stick, paired with a lower seating position that put the pilot's hips nearly level with the rudder pedals, an arrangement inspired by the German FW190. It gave better G tolerance and a tighter, more natural feel in hard turns. Above it all, a raised bubble canopy offered an unobstructed view, far better than the Corsairs, and could be opened high for carrier landings. Hawker's engineers also gave the pilot something rare in British fighters, true cockpit ergonomics. Controls were neatly arranged along the side ledges, again echoing the efficient layout of the FW190. A solid cockpit floor kept the cold out and dropped maps or tools from vanishing into the fuselage, small touches, but meaningful ones. Flight control surfaces reflected the same modern thinking. The ailerons and rudder used spring tabs to keep forces light even beyond 400 miles per hour, while the elevator remained direct for crisp stall recovery. Its wing design was pure Hawker, homegrown, not a borrowed American NACA profile, shaped for high-speed stability rather than gentle handling. That meant higher wing loading, higher stall speeds, and razor-sharp responsiveness once airborne. Each wing folded hydraulically for carrier storage, with a manual backup pump if the system failed. In every detail, The Sea Fury combined traditional British craftsmanship with forward-looking aerodynamics, the last and finest expression of piston-powered fighter design before the jets took over. Power and speed mean little without systems that keep a fighter flying under fire, and the Sea Fury's plumbing and control architecture shows how seriously Hawker took that lesson. Fuel capacity was practical and purposeful, about 200 gallons internally plus room for roughly 180 gallons in external drop tanks, laid out across 5 separate tanks. The main and auxiliary tanks were linked and behaved as a single unit for normal flying, while 2 interspar tanks sat inside the wings and a smaller nose tank lived in the right wing to balance the installation. Hawker simplified the pilot's workload with an automatic feed system. When the combined main aux level fell below about 117 gallons, pressure-fed air forced the wing tanks into the main tank. No separate fuel pump action required. The drop tanks worked the same way when selected, feeding the main tank by air pressure rather than by a mechanical pump. The payoff was obvious: fewer selectors to juggle during combat and less chance of a misstep at a critical moment. And because each tank was a separate cell, battle damage to one didn't mean an instant loss of all fuel. The Sea Fury used a pragmatic mix of systems: hydraulics for wing folding, landing gear and flaps, electric systems for cooling shutters and weapon controls, and pneumatics for brakes and emergency extensions. Tanks were self-sealing, and the cockpit carried armor rated to stop 20mm threats, built not for show but for surviving real warfare. All that structure and refinement served one purpose: to harness the tremendous power up front. The Sea Fury's heart was the Bristol Centaurus Mark 18, one of the most advanced radial engines ever built in Britain. With 18 cylinders in 2 rows, displacing 3,270 cubic inches, about 53.6 liters, it delivered 2,480 horsepower to a massive 5-bladed propeller. The torque was enormous. Pilots described takeoff as wrestling a bear until the airplane found its rhythm. Yet once airborne, it was smooth, strong, and deceptively refined, proof of just how far the piston engine had come. At the core of the Centaurus lay a technology that set it apart: the sleeve valve. Instead of using the usual poppet valves that opened and closed like doors, it used thin metal sleeves that slid and rotated inside the cylinders, uncovering ports for intake and exhaust. The idea dated back to Charles Knight, an inventive American who patented it in 1901. Through the 1910s, his design reached Europe, where Argyll of Scotland built and refined it, and later, the British engineer Harry Ricardo proved its potential for high power and quiet operation. The Bristol Aeroplane Company saw its future and perfected the concept across 3 generations of engines: Perseus, Hercules, and finally Centaurus, each one stronger, cooler, and more reliable than the last. The sleeve valve had real advantages. With no bulky valve heads in the way, airflow through the cylinders was smoother, allowing higher compression ratios and better volumetric efficiency. Combustion was more even, running cooler and quieter, with plenty of room for 2 spark plugs per cylinder. It was elegant engineering, the kind that looked almost magical when it worked. But it demanded absolute precision. The sleeves had to move and rotate within thousandths of an inch, sealed by exotic alloys that could survive heat, pressure, and motion all at once. It was beautifully efficient and brutally difficult to build. Compared to its American rival, the Pratt & Whitney R2800, the Centaurus seemed simpler on paper, but no less capable. The R2800 used a 2-stage supercharger, intercooling, water methanol injection, and 150-octane fuel to produce similar power. The Centaurus reached the same neighborhood using 130-octane fuel, a single-stage 2-speed supercharger, and no water injection at all. On equal boost, its potential was remarkable. If tuned to the Corsair's 60 inches of manifold pressure, engineers estimated it could push close to 3,000 horsepower. more than enough to keep pace with any late-war radial in the world. In the end, the Centaurus represented the final summit of British piston engine design, smooth, efficient, and immensely powerful, yet built just as the jet age made such mastery obsolete. Had the calendar turned a few years differently, this engine might have powered a whole new generation of prop-driven fighters. Instead, it became the Sea Fury's heart, a mechanical masterpiece that marked both the peak and the farewell of the piston era. All that power translated into performance that few piston fighters could match. With the Centaurus roaring up front, the Sea Fury was a brute in a tailored suit, fast, precise, and frighteningly stable at high speed. Its top end reached around 465 miles per hour, edging out most of its contemporaries and placing it among the fastest prop-driven aircraft ever to operate from a carrier deck. It could climb alongside the finest of them, matching the Supermarine Seafire Mark 47 at higher altitudes and handily outpacing the Grumman F-8F Bearcat down low, where its torque and sheer mass carried it through. When it came to the dive, the British machine reigned supreme. The Sea Fury could safely push beyond Mach 0.76, a remarkable figure for a piston aircraft, holding its integrity while other fighters began to tremble. But that stability came at a price. With high wing loading and a stall speed over 103 knots, it couldn't quite match the Bearcat's cat-like agility in a low-speed turning fight. In combat terms, the American might get the first turn, but the British fighter would be there when it mattered most, coming out of the dive faster, steadier, and ready to fire. Firepower, at least, was a British specialty. The Sea Fury carried 420mm Hispano cannons with about 580 rounds total, a destructive mix ideal for air combat or ground strikes. The Bearcat mounted the same number of guns, but with slightly more ammunition. The Seafire carried fewer. The Hawker could also haul rockets and bombs, turning it into a formidable strike platform, something neither rival managed as gracefully. With roughly 1,800 miles of range when using drop tanks, it could roam farther too. And in toughness, nothing else came close. Its armor could shrug off 20mm hits, and its redundant fuel and hydraulic systems gave it a real chance to make it home from damage that would cripple lesser planes. In the final accounting, the Sea Fury stood atop its class, a fighter that combined the speed of the jet age with the endurance of piston tradition. Among the last super props, it was the undisputed champion of the sea. Its reputation wasn't built in theory. It was earned in combat. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, the Sea Fury became the Royal Navy's frontline strike fighter, launching from carriers to provide close air support and ground attack. Its rugged airframe and enormous torque made it ideal for the job. If a ship's catapult failed, it could even take off using RATO, rocket-assisted launch, a lifesaver in rough seas. Over Korea, Sea Furies strafed tanks, bridges, and trains with deadly accuracy, often returning home riddled with flak, but still flying. In one famous encounter, a Sea Fury flight engaged MiG-15 jets, and against all odds, shot one down without losing a plane. A decade later, the type resurfaced in the Bay of Pigs. Cuba fielded just 4 Sea Furies against CIA-backed B-26 invaders and supply ships. Despite the mismatch, the piston fighters destroyed 2 bombers and sank 2 vessels, proving once again that in capable hands, the Sea Fury could punch far above its weight. Small wars, yes, but every time it fought, it won. As the jet age swept across the world, the Sea Fury stood as the final roar of the propeller era, the last great piston fighter before turbines silenced the sky. Yet even after leaving carrier decks, its story didn't fade. In the decades that followed, it found a second life at the Reno Air Races, where power and courage still rule the desert air. Modified Sea Furies became legends once more, led by Dreadnought, a heavily re-engined monster with a Pratt & Whitney R4360, turning out nearly 3,800 horsepower. For nearly 40 years, it placed in the top 3, winning more often than any other racer. Fast, reliable, and far tougher than the fragile Merlin conversions that came and went. Today, the Sea Fury endures as a symbol of engineering perfection at the edge of obsolescence, a late-born hero bridging 2 ages of flight. From carrier decks to desert pylons, it remains alive in the sound, speed, and spirit of its time. What do you think? Was the Sea Fury the last true warbird, or the first machine of a new era? Like if you've ever heard that Centaurus growl in person, and subscribe for more stories of the legends that kept the skies alive long after the guns went silent.